All right. Hello. Today we're here to talk to you about using Redux to drive analytics within your apps. I'm Evan Schultz.
And I'm Bertrand.
And before we get started, just kind of a brief overview of the agenda that we'll be talking about this afternoon.
So we're going to start with an overview of what Lean Analytics actually is. All right, we're going to start with an overview of what Lean Analytics actually is.
And then after that, we'll talk about the current challenges.
And then kind of look at Redux and how it actually helps with those challenges.
And then finally, at the end, I will kind of do the risky thing of trying to live code an example showing how to implement a middleware into your apps that will allow you to drive analytics.
So Lean Analytics is a practice that advocates a certain cycle in order to find a product market fit. So this cycle, briefly, consists of a continuous cycle of building, measuring, and learning from those measurements. It also introduces validated learning as a measure of progress. So as you learn more, that's actually how you measure just what you've accomplished.
Yeah. So the first step of this a cycle is the build, and recently with all of the tools and libraries that we have available, we are getting much better at building things faster. We have libraries like React and Redux with tools for continuous integration and continuous deployment. We can get out our features to users faster. And then we also have tooling with things like code push that allows us to run many experiments at the same time. And with the ability to build fast, we're able to kind of adjust and pivot as we need.
So the second part has us actually measuring now that we built something. We built something, and now we're collecting the data, and that data tells us essentially whether we've built the right thing or not. Measuring has been hard, especially historically. We'll get into why later, but as opposed to building, we're really not that great at measuring. We'll be spending most of our talk here on the challenges involved in this particular cycle of Lean startup.
Yeah. However, the final step of Lean Analytics is the learning. So we've built things. We're now measuring and collecting data. And then at this point, we need to kind of be able to learn from that data to make a informed choice. And then with those choices, we can decide what to build next and iterate and repeat this process again. However, we won't be covering the learning during this talk, so we will kind of take a step back and take a look at why measuring is hard.
So this is measuring, and it is hard. But it's also important. It's just historically speaking, it's been very hard to do right and do consistently. Let's kind of take some time here and delve into the real reasons underlying that difficulty.
Yeah, so for one of the first reasons is basically the instrumentation code for analytics tends to be scattered throughout your application. It might be in your DOM, it might be in your JavaScript, and then there's also many execution paths that you want to try and measure. There's also kind of a low cohesion between the interaction that the user is doing and the analytics that you want to have. And it's not easy to know that every point in your application is being covered without doing a full audit of your application code. We think that with using Redux, that you can better co-locate the analytics that you want to track, along with the interactions.
The other issue that's historically been attached to this part of measuring is that solutions that have been available or that have been built have tied the analytics bit to essentially templates. Here we have a key semantic interaction adding to cart, but it could be done multiple ways through different views. A sidebar can have related items where you could click to buy. The main view can have the primary actions that are click to buy. And you're having to essentially hunt down all these places in your templates in order to measure the same kind of semantic interaction.
The other challenges that we face come in terms of scalability and maintainability. It is difficult to scale scale analytics across teams and releases because we're building these larger and larger systems, and they're becoming harder and more difficult to reason about, and even trying to measure how they're being used even more so. Then also with these applications, there is also this constant change. They're being maintained by larger and larger teams. They're implementing more and more features, and the things that you want to measure are constantly changing throughout the app. And we think that with Redux, it's getting easier to build out these applications because Redux, if used properly, can make your applications easier to reason.
So a lot of you here are already familiar with Redux, but we'll just touch upon it a little bit. It's a library for managing application state. It has a single global immutable store. All actions pass through the dispatcher. This is key. We're going to come back to this in a bit. And reducers take the current state and the dispatched action and return a new state. But there's also an additional bit here that you can see in the diagram, and that middleware allows to kind of intercept those actions and actually act upon them before they reach a reducer.
Yeah, so kind of middleware can act as a point of side effects within your system because every action that is getting dispatched is going through all of the middlewares that you have. And this is what will allow us to hook our analytics into the Redux loop.
So how does Redux and the whole middleware concept help again?
So for the first area that helps is that it allows us to have our analytics be more declarative. So within our actions, we can attach data saying what we want to track, what the event is, what the properties are, and then being a Redux application, if we really wanted to, we also have access to the entire application state.
It also allows us to co-locate the thing that we're measuring with our actual measurement. So we get to actually co-locate it with the actual interaction, as opposed to some other abstraction or some other representation of that interaction, as was the case in earlier example with DOM nodes. So this co-location is a secondary benefit here.
Yeah, so for example, here we have a add to-do, and then if there's like a way to add a to-do in any spot of your application, you don't have to worry about adding the, say, tags to your template in every single spot saying, oh, I want to track this here. All you have to do is go and kind of like co-locate this data along with your add to-do action. And then finally, with most of us in our Redux applications, we tend to have a actions file with all of our actions, or maybe actions for an area in one spot. So this starts to kind of centralize our analytics into one spot. And this gives us a really easy spot where we can go and see what's being tracked, what's not being tracked, and even what type of details we are tracking. And this really helps solve the maintainability issue that we discussed before.
And so here we'll be delving into how we actually do this in practice, and the way that these problems are actually tackled in real applications. We are going to be presenting a Redux middleware that we use. This Redux middleware leverages a service called Segment. We'll go into what that is and why we do that. And unsurprisingly, we've called the middleware Redux Segment. Yeah,
so kind of Segment, if you're not aware, is an analytics service, and it kind of provides you with one API that has many integrations. For example, it integrates with Keen.io, Google Analytics, and it kind of provides you with one API for many integrations, and it also has an event consistency across many tools. There are also a few benefits of going with Segment, such as event replay and support for ETL, amongst more.
Segment itself is an abstraction. It's a generic interface over all these providers. As such, it provides key semantic events that work essentially in a similar manner across all different providers. So you don't have to actually change what you're tracking semantically when you're using tools. Here's an overview of the API. You have identify, which is your typical call whenever you know details about the user, personally identifiable details sometimes. Sometimes it could be just a trait. There's the generic track. This is the most flexible custom type of event tracking. This is for essentially any other event that doesn't fit within the rest of the categories. You have page and screen, which are basically your views. Page is for a web page, screen is for a mobile view. Group and alias both work with identity to allow you to associate users and somehow maybe associate past sessions to current users in the case of alias. So all this works for all the providers that they work with.
Yeah, so the implementation that we have here is a broadly applicable one. So kind of even though the solution that we have is specific to Segment.io, this pattern can be used with any analytics provider. So the concepts can be applied there also. Yeah, so now just to kind of demonstrate how easy it can be to add analytics to an existing application, I'm going to do a demo of our Redux segment. So the application that we have here is kind of called DevMatch. It's kind of like a Tinder for devs, where you can kind of say, you can see things that you've matched. So React, a few people want to talk about React. Nobody cares about Segment yet, live server. You can go and create topics and whatnot. And currently, this is an application that we built a while ago just to help run a React training. And we didn't really have analytics in mind at the time of creating this.
So this is an application that was built without this use case in mind. And so we're going to start putting it in incrementally and show that it really is just generic and applicable to your current application.
Yeah, so kind of the first step that you'd have to do is a npm install Redux-segment. However, I don't trust npm install on conference Wi-Fi's, so that's already done for me. So the first bit of code that we kind of have to do is when you kind of sign up for Segment, they'll provide you with this script tag that you'll want to add to the index of your application.
This is in place of any of those other script tags that you're used to placing, like the GA script tag. So you'd put this instead of that one.
Yeah, and kind of where we have our analytics.load, this is your Segment write key. And we can take out this analytics.page here, because out of the box, Redux Segment will hook into your Redux router events. So out of the box, you'll get page tracking with only a few lines of code. The next thing that we have to do is in our index.js is import the create tracker from Redux.
So this is just a method that builds essentially the middleware and allows you to configure it for your use case.
So this creates the tracker, and then in your Redux application where you're kind of creating your middleware, we have our thunk, a saga, our logger. All we have to do is include the tracker here. And with just a few lines of code, the application will now start tracking your page views and route changes.
Make sure you put it after thunk or any promise middleware that you may have, just so it does actually see the actual action and not a function.
And it's going to ensure that this is loading, and I change routes a few times. And when I go into segment, if this is kind of playing nice.
So what he's looking there is a debugger that they provide. So any event that the library is sending to your account can be tested and shown through the debugger. This is essentially the same thing that Google Analytics would be seeing, or Mixpanel.
Yeah, so you can see that just with a few lines of code, I now have tracking on, like, I switch between topics and matches. And this is a lot of the detail that you're able to get with only a few lines of code. The next aspect that we'll show is kind of the tracking events, where you can kind of do in-depth tracking of the user actions within the application. So with Redux Segment, there's two ways that you can handle the track event. There is a long form and verbose way that allows you to kind of specify the event payload with a type that might be more meaningful, and also any properties that you'll want to track with it. And then since this is a Redux application, you could in theory have access to your Git state and pull out any details from your application state that you want to track along with this. So what I want to do is jump over to where we're handling our topics.
So this is the functionality that you saw before.
Yeah, so kind of here is our existing kind of like create topic success, and just to kind of avoid typos live on stage, I was going to like copy and paste the replacement here. And the only thing that we've changed in our application, we haven't changed our application logic at all. We haven't had to add anything else. Is I just added a meta property within that, the analytics tag, an event type saying event types.track. And also, be sure to import event types from Redux Segment up top.
So that API that you saw before, there's just an enum for you to use and prevent some typos sometimes.
Yeah, and then in the properties, I'm just going to take the entire response object and have that be part of my tracking. And now, if I go back to the application, my topic is created successfully. And when I go back over to the segment debugger, you can now see that it tracked the create topic success, and quite a bit of details is now available to be seen. We can see that it was who it was created by, the full object, the title, and the description. Then if you go down to the raw, you can see that it's tracking each of these by an anonymous ID. And right now, not a specific user, because we have not done identity yet. However, if you don't want to be this verbose with adding the tracking event and just have a bunch of actions that you want to add track to, there's also a short form of adding a tracking data to an action. And for that, all you have to do is in your meta tag, in your meta property of your action payload, is have an analytics key with event types.track.
So what you want to do here is try to avoid sending the entire store at every single event, so you can start adding data as you need it. That way you can make sense of it later when you're trying to fetch it again.
Yeah, so now here I'll just kind of quickly add return type. I think that's just beautification errors, I hope. Yes, that's just linting not being happy. So I'm just going to go and quickly add the short form of tracking to several actions within this application.
So mostly just a meta key and an analytics key and whatever enum value is the equivalent of track. In this case, we're just referring to it by name.
So now when I jump back to the application, I can say I'm interested in this, not interested in whatever X was, and kind of mark these through. And then when we go over to the debugger again, you're now starting to see all of these events flowing into the segment IO in real time. And this is with very little effort on the developer's part to start adding analytics to an application. And I'm not sure how many of you have tried to go and add analytics to it. You've like gone out, you've built the application, you didn't really think about analytics at the start, and then the requirement, oh, what about analytics, and how much of a pain that can be to go through and start adding it into your application. And then the final thing that I'll be showing is tracking the identity of a user. So
it's been anonymous so far.
Yeah.
It's been essentially an auto-generated ID that the library generates. And here what we're going to try and do is associate that with something that's meaningful for your application, such as the email of the person.
Yeah, so here, yeah, you'll see the anonymous ID.
A little cut off. It's a long UUID.
Yes, so here we have the anonymous ID, and then down here the user ID is null. So for the final tracking of identity is over where we're handling our login. Right now, there's no analytics being tracked here, but what we're going to be doing is on our login success. And if we wanted to, we could have, we could be tracking that the logging is pending. We could also be tracking the error. So what I'm going to do is just add the metadata to the login success.
And once he's finished doing that, all prior actions will actually be attributed retroactively to that ID. So
yeah, so now I'm going to jump back over to my application. Do a quick logout. Log back in. Hopefully log back
hopefully
in.
It works, yeah.
There we go. So now we're logged back in. And I think it's just my Heroku parse server being a bit slow right now. However, once you go back over to the dashboard here, and at times there can be a bit of a delay between the actions being fired off.
But you should see the identify event come in like we've been seeing the track event so far.
So for some reason, the identity is taking a bit longer to.
But the key line here is where you see line number 9899, where we've actually just called identify and provided a payload of a username and whatever traits you want to associate with that username. So that could be an AB exposure, that can be a company name. It could be almost anything that you want to be tied to that user for later retrieval.
Yeah, and I think
when the internet cooperates, it'll be there.
Yeah, I think Segment is just deciding to be a little bit slow right now. Track. Yeah, so these are some of the older things that we were tracking. So it seems like Segment is just being a little bit slow at catching up with our requests right now. However, if Segment was like filtering in the data properly, we'd see the identity here with the username and details. Then every subsequent action would then be associated with that specific a user. So yeah, I think that kind of wraps up the demo of our Redux segment. And hopefully with this, you can see how easy it can be to add analytics to an existing Redux app. And
that's all. Thank you.